Is anybody prepared to comment at all on the status of this matter at this time? Bart Croes, the head of our research division.
Good afternoon. Actually, Michael Jarrett from USC has published an analysis of Los Angeles, which shows a very strong relationship between PM2.5 exposure and premature death. That work was published in 2005. It's in the open peer-reviewed literature, and I'll make sure that that's provided to the person giving the testimony. He does have a project with us to do analysis for all of California, not just Los Angeles. That's ongoing. He's using data from the American Cancer Society. They're the ones that hold that data, and it's to protect the individuals that participate in that study. It's really not available. Something Michael Jarrett cannot give to anyone on the outside, and if people require that data, they should contact the American Cancer Society directly.
My recollection, going way back to the time when we first set the fine particle standard at EPA in 2007, was that there were demands on the part of other groups, outside groups, who wanted American Cancer Society data that ACS refused to release because of privacy-type issues. And at the end of the day, there was some process that was worked out through the Health Effects Institute where they actually did find a way to get some additional people to try to rerun the studies that had been done. Is that what we're talking about here?
If I might interject a bit. Well, the Health Effects Institute actually funded reanalysis of some of the initial studies with regard to PM 2.5 and mortality that were done by Harvard investigators. Dr. Jarrett was one of the group that was part of the reanalysis. So first of all, I want to say Michael Jarrett's a colleague of mine at UC Berkeley. If that makes me have conflict of interest in these statements, so be it. But I can state that he's a scientist of great integrity and believes in transparency of data. That's what is an integral part of the scientific process. But I don't think he believes in any giving data without the permission of the American Cancer Society, which I can tell you guards their data very carefully on the basis of a publication that Dr. Jarrett had earlier. Actually, in 2009, I wanted to follow up with him and do a secondary analysis, and we're still waiting to get approval from the American Cancer Society to do that. And so I do think the data will eventually be available, but it's the American Cancer Society that has to be approached, and the Health Effects Institute may be able to help convince the American Cancer Society to release the data. But the American Cancer Society is very difficult with regard to other investigators getting access to their data. I'm a case in point in that regard.
Right.
Okay, well.
It's curious to me why the American Cancer Society wouldn't release that, but in your redoing the methodology report, are you not asking for that information? I mean, that seems like it's almost crucial to do what you need to do.
For our reassessment of the relationship between PM 2.5 and health effects, we're relying on already published peer-reviewed literature, which in some of those studies do rely on this American Cancer Society data. That data has been reanalyzed by an independent group, the University of Ottawa, I believe, and so those studies have been reproduced. The raw data that I think the testifier was asking for includes information on individuals, where they live, how old they are, diet, race, and so forth, and that's just not data that the American Cancer Society can share under the guidelines of acquiring that data in the first place. It's just
yes, the data could be de-identified and then reanalyzed. I agree.
And that's what happened.
I'm in favor of having the data be made available. I'm just saying that we don't have the power to automatically make it available. I do think at the February 26th symposium that Dr. Jarrett will be there, and Dr. Enstrom, who's been very concerned about getting those data, will also be present, and perhaps we can get to some kind of way to move forward at that meeting.
Also, the Health Effects Institute will be there, which did the reanalysis, or funded the reanalysis, as well as Dan Pruski, who's the Canadian investigator that did the reanalysis, will be there.
The data that you are getting, I mean, is it going to be California specific, or is it just including the whole country and using the whole country's data to kind of make a California?
What we're relying on primarily is the US EPA Integrated Science Assessment, which did look at the whole country. There have been some California-specific studies which show a whole range of results, and those will be discussed at the symposium on the 26th.
I mean, I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here, but I think it would be important to kind of really know if there is a difference because of the different type of particulate matter that's in California versus in New York or Chicago or whatever. I mean, to me, it's kind of a scientific question that should be asked, and if the data is out there, to kind of get some information in this regards, I think it would be very helpful for not just us, but the whole scientific community. Because one of the questions I've always asked since I've been involved in this, is there a difference between the particles between between the different regions of the country? And reviewing the cardiovascular literature, there's quite a bit of difference when they talk about the composition of these particles in Boston versus Los Angeles. And a lot of the cardiovascular literature comes out of Boston, which is high in metals and whatever they do out there, versus what you see in the PM composition in Los Angeles. To me, it's always been kind of a scientific inquiry, just kind of an interesting thing. Is there a biological difference in what's actually happening?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Certainly the transportation sources that dominate the PM 2.5 are the same, but there are some stationary source differences, coal combustion in the east versus natural gas here.
Differences in the background air quality and moisture content of the air, and yes, of course. But the multi-city studies this is a flashback to 1996, at least, as far as I'm concerned.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Bart, but the current CARB support for Dr. Jarrett is to specifically look at the California component of the American Cancer Society data.
That's correct.
And so I think Dr. Jarrett will be at the February 26th symposium, and it's fair game for people to ask him what that analysis shows so far, though I know it's not completed at this point.
Right, and I didn't mean my comment to suggest that we shouldn't keep pursuing it. I think we should be pursuing it, absolutely.